the family business gods give with one hand and they take with the other. So you naturally get a level of trust and you have a level of integrity when you work in a family business. But the thing that takes away is that there is not a clear separate line between this is business and this is family. When I was on £5 a day, it's impossible to go home and sit around the dinner table and then bring up that I'm on £5 a day. You're going in every day. And there was a point that I was in for something like 85 days straight for 13 hours a day. I was doing everything I could at that point to try and save the business. To a degree, I thought I was trying to save my relationship with my parents because I didn't want to let them down. You come out of school and you think, oh, you're taught, don't copy anybody. Don't copy anybody. Tell you what the best thing to do in business is, copy somebody. They've done it. They've done all the hard work, just copy it, make it a bit better. It's not difficult. And I don't consider myself that clever, but we've been hugely successful. But I would be lying if I said it was my ideas. You don't need a unique or original idea. Just take someone else's and make it a little bit better.
Struan, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. Great to have you.
It's great to be here.
Let's start with just hearing a little bit about your business. Tell us what it is.
Sure. So my business is HiFi Corner. We are Scotland's longest established specialist audio retailer. I suppose it's a niche of a niche. So it's specifically in audio, but specifically kind of home domestic, high performance systems. And then over the last kind of 5 to 10 years, we've moved into the home cinema space as well. So if someone has a room that they want to convert into a custom home theatre, we have a team that can design that both from an interior design aspect all the way to actually installing it, fitting out with a big projector and your reclining seats and all that kind of thing. So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Amazing. And where are you based? What team have you got? Talk us through that.
So we've always had a base in Edinburgh, and we used to be based not far from here actually in Leith Walk. But about 4 years ago, we moved to the outskirts of town in Joppa, where we opened a flagship facility. And then we've also got a shop in Falkirk, of all places. Slightly random, but we've also had a shop in Falkirk for many decades as well.
Amazing. So just talk us through, how did that, because I know you were established back in 1970, it's a long time ago for a lot of businesses. Talk us through, your intro into the business, family business, just, tell us how it all started.
Yeah, so I think the family business element probably is pretty pivotal in the whole story. So the business was originally owned by a guy called Graham Tyzo from Tyzo's Outdoor Clothing. So anyone in Scotland would probably know Tyzo Outdoors. Yeah. So he owned HiFi Corner. He employed my dad. And my dad then worked for him and then ultimately did a management buyout of the business and took over. And that's how so it's not a kind of multi-generational family business, but that was kind of where my intro then comes in shortly after that.
Amazing. And so what was that process like then? Talk us through that.
It was maybe not as structured as people think it is. So I think there's always assumptions around family business, which are that there's always a plan for the next generation to be involved. And that wasn't really the case for us. It wasn't a plan. It was kind of it just kind of happened. So I was pretty bad at school. I'm quite dyslexic. The school had kind of labelled me as a bit stupid. But then my dad paid for me to go to a private school and they upgraded me to dyslexic. So I was quite, felt that was quite an upgrade and probably worth the yearly fee. So I wasn't great. I didn't do very well. The system didn't really work for me. So my dad decided one day that I should make tea and coffee for the people in the shop. So basically at 15, I got dropped off outside the shop and he said, go in there and make tea and coffee. Now, I had no idea how to make tea and coffee. So I was told to make tea and coffee. I still can't make tea or coffee. And in actual fact, I was so traumatized by not knowing how to make a tea or coffee that till this day, I have never tasted a tea or a coffee.
Really? What, in today's coffee culture?
Yeah, no, never sampled one, never sipped it. I don't know what a mocha latte, frappuccino is. I've got no idea.
So what did you drink instead?
I just drink water or iron brew.
Cool.
So Do you think
You must have saved a fortune then over your lifetime so far on these £4 coffees, eh?
Oh, I think it's crazy. I can't believe that people spend £4 on a coffee.
Yeah.
Do you genuinely think that's like a hangover from that?
I think we've assessed it, and there's two elements. So one was definitely that, and the other one was growing up. We've always remembered that when we wanted to go to a park, or we wanted to go out, and do something fun or go see our friends, my mum and dad would always say, "We'll go, but I'm just gonna have a cup of tea first, or I'm just gonna have a coffee first." So to me, tea and coffee is a delay to fun. It's like, we're going to do this before we do the fun activity. So I really resent Starbucks on a kind of deep level for delaying the fun in life.
What kind of things do you do for fun then, out of interest?
Well, I mainly work. But yeah, I don't drink tea or coffee. That's just, I know that's strange, and I know that everyone at time, it's really awkward as well, because you go somewhere, you go in somebody's house and say, right, here's a cup of tea. And some people just put it in front of you, and they'll say, do you want milk with that? And I'm like, I don't want that at all. And I just have to say, my go-to line is, do you know, I've just had like 3 coffees in the car. Can I just have some water?
Right.
Because it's easier than having to explain the long story I just had to explain to you, which now feels very unnecessary.
Yeah, well, I understand. So, 15.
Shall we move on to talk about business stories?
Move on. So, you dropped off at 15, couldn't make tea or coffee.
Yeah.
So, what was the transition then from, the school world into the business world as you went into your early 20s?
Yep. So, was pretty lousy at that. So, tried in the shop to try and do other things. So, like I would, do some hoovering or do some dusting, which kind of led into like pointing a customer in the right direction, or speaking to them whilst they waited to speak to one of the sales team or a manager or whatever they were in the retail shop to do. So I kind of fell into that role developing, but it wasn't really planned. And my dad kind of decided that it would be good work experience for me. And I was quite up for that, because my sister was a couple of years older and she got a job at Greg's. Well, she told me she was on £6.20, and my dad said to me that I'll pay you £5. So I thought, well, she's a couple of years older. I thought that's pretty good. But it turns out that she was on £6.20 an hour, and I was on £5 a day. And then I calculated it out. So it was £3 on the bus to get in and out of work, and I spent £2.50 on my lunch. So I was losing 50p each day. So I went home to my dad and I said, Dad, I can't work for £5 a day. I'm actually losing money. And he said, first lesson in life, son, always negotiate. And you haven't negotiated, so you're on £5 a day. And although he thinks that was the first lesson I had, I think the first lesson I had was, in a family business, you can get screwed. But being a little bit belligerent and refusing to quit, I continued for probably about a year, subsidizing the work from my own pocket money that my mum would give me on the side.
So what was your next negotiating stance then to move from £5 to whatever the next level was?
So eventually a role came up. So I then went from school, which I did pretty badly at. I went off to college, which I did pretty badly at. And then I thought about doing university, and I was like, this academic thing just doesn't work for me. It's just not my thing. So let's just get a job in the shop, and I can move boxes, and I can, speak to people. And by speaking to people, I then kind of naturally fell into a bit more of a sales role. And then when a full-time sales position came up, I applied for it, and I was given the job, because I've been there by this point for like 2 years. So it kind of made sense. I could be in a sales role.
So you still have to apply for it. It's family business, but you still have to apply for the role?
Yes. So although it was a family business, my father wasn't actually running the business. He had a managing director in place.
Oh, okay.
And I think that, again, there's a bit of there can often be a misconception with when you work in a family business, people go, oh, well, he will end up running it. Now, it turns out that I did end up running it. But through the course of the next 5 years, between 17 and 22, I applied for almost every job that was a step up: assistant manager jobs, operations manager jobs, and got rejected for all of them. And there was definitely an element of, no, if he gets promoted, then it will look bad on the business. It'll look like favoritism. Or at least, that again, that's a part assumption. But I think the important thing is that I don't think I was treated differently. I think I was at least treated the same. Which is important for me, because I don't want to feel like I was given something. I want to feel like I earned something.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think, as you say, with the family business dynamic, it's like you always. I know my brother worked for me for a while, and there was always like that weird awkwardness between him and the other team, where it was like, oh, is he getting? And it eventually just didn't work, and I was like, I'm never hiring family or friends ever again. Like we're done. Like that was a big lesson for me. But we've also had other folk that I've met who have very successful family businesses who actually get on really well. And where would you put yourself in that kind of, would you actively hire more family members, or, having experienced that?
I would say that working or being part of a family business is the family business gods give with one hand and they take with the other.
Right.
So you naturally get a level of trust, and you have a level of integrity when you work in a family business, that because you're trusted by the ownership, you're trusted by your siblings and your family. But the thing that takes away is that there is not a clear separate line between this is business and this is family. And when I was on £5 a day, it's impossible to go home and sit around the dinner table and then bring up that I'm on £5 a day, because that's not an appropriate setting for it. So you can often end up suffering. And I've since spoken to a lot of people involved in family business, and some of the new generation, really find it difficult to perhaps get the other generation to step aside, or to allow them to go in and develop the business. And this is a whole topic in its own right. But we've actually ended up having a family business coach involved in our company, to move things along and to progress the way that it works. Because there's also a really strange feeling of obligation. So when the company, I'm sure we'll get onto this, but when the company was in a bad position, I felt obliged to make sure that it was performing well. And that stress and pressure all fell to me, more so than anyone else in the team or in the company. Because for me, it's personal.
Out of interest, you talked about the family business coach. What did that involvement, what did that do for kind of you and other family members then?
For us, it was very transformational. I suppose what she brought was a level of outside perspective, and we were able to discuss what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, when and where is it appropriate, and start to build a structure. Yeah. Now, most businesses have that structure already within their teams. They might have what their quarterly meetings are, or what their review process are, or what their KPIs are, or what their appraisal system is. Yeah. But often in a family business, it just becomes muddied, because it's just like, well, we're family, so we just need to get on with it. Yeah. And having someone external help bring clarity to that. Nice. And help things move along and progress.
Yeah. Great. So let's move a little bit further on then. You kind of mentioned, there was a time when the business kind of got into hardship. What position were you in at that point? And talk us through like what you had to do and the struggles that you...
Yeah. So, it's, I'm in a sales role. It's 2008, 2009. We sell electronics. There's a recession. The products we sell are very low margin. There's Amazon comes around, the web comes around, discounting comes around online. And the business was in a position that there was kind of a perfect storm on many fronts, and got into some serious financial difficulty. And my dad was always one for involving me in quite high level things in the business, which I maybe shouldn't have been privy to, but was. So we went in for a meeting with a bank manager. Now, we were losing about £200,000 a year. So we were hemorrhaging money. We were hard up against our overdraft. And my dad said, look, I'm going to see the bank manager. It's not really your place business-wise to see it, but I'm going to take you along because it'll be good for you personally to see how this guy deals with us and how we're going to deal with him. So we sit down and the bank manager says, we're pulling your overdraft. we're going to put you on a term loan. It's 7% to pay it back. And you have to put your house on the line to guarantee it. So I'm like 20, working in a business in a sales role, and then realize that if I don't perform, my family potentially loses their house.
Yeah.
That is a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Wow.
So when I say that, family businesses give with one hand and take with the other, the underlying pressure of some of these things can be, life-changing and crippling and stressful and,
So at that point, did you feel the pressure from that point as you heard it come out of the bank manager's lips then? And how long did that last, that pressure on you?
I suppose the pressures, to a degree, was always there until we had resolved it and turned around the business, which realistically probably took from that point about 5 years.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's a long time, isn't it, to feel under that kind of pressure?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, you're going in every day. And there was a point that I was in for something like 85 days straight for 13 hours a day. Wow. I was doing everything I could at that point to try and save the business, because I wasn't saving the business. I was trying to save, to a degree, I thought I was trying to save my relationship with my parents because I didn't want to let them down.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I don't know how I'd be able to live with that.
Wow.
And I also felt, because I was involved in the company when it was losing the amount of money it was losing, I then felt, even once we'd resolved that and we had to ultimately turn the business around, I felt like I wanted to make my family the money back that they'd lost.
Yeah, yeah.
So you end up making decisions that are not perhaps in the best interests of the business or the best interests of yourself, but decisions that are in the best interests for the family. Yeah. And that can be a lot of pressure to take on.
Yeah. And how aware were your family that was the pressure that you had kind of brought on your shoulders?
I think they were very aware of it.
Right.
There was another element that was, my father definitely thought, well, we'll just close the business and we'll liquidate it and we'll just walk away. But there's pressure from his side to go, well, actually, I don't want to put my son out of a job.
Yeah.
So there's this really weird, kind of almost unspoken issue on both sides, where I'm desperately trying to save the business for them, but they don't want me to destroy myself to save the business. So, it was difficult and it was bad. But I think that these things are great because they built in a huge level of resilience into me personally. So I'm actually I wouldn't change that situation at all.
So what then did you discover to be ultimately the problem then, over those next 5 years?
Yeah.
Like what were the strings you started to pull that turned it round?
Yeah, so they say, like, your personal trainer will always say that you can't outrun a bad diet. And in business, you can't outwork a bad business. So I was trying to work as hard as I possibly could to turn around this sinking ship. And at some point, you've just got to say, it's not right. This is not structured in the right way. You've got to step back from the day-to-day, look at the numbers, look at the structure of the business, look at the team, and make some really hard choices. And when I was about 25, I sat down, probably half the team, made them redundant, and went from having 4 shops down to 2. And I just cut everything.
Yeah.
Cut all the overheads, cut it right back. And I thought, let's just completely strip this business back to as little as possible. And I know how to deal with that because I've worked my way up through the business. I understand all of the various roles and what needs to be done. So I'll continue to do that, and then we'll rebuild it. And it probably took another 3 years after cutting it back to build it into what it was probably originally before all this started, which is the most successful specialist audio shop in the country.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah. And two questions. One is, how do you feel about that now? But before that, what was the trigger point for you? Because obviously it's quite hard, isn't it, when you're in the business to actually see what's going on. So you must have had a moment of clarity that said, right, enough's enough. I'm making some structural changes. Can you remember what kind of brought you to that point?
Yeah, so specifically after I'd worked this huge, I was not going to stop working 12, 13 hours a day every day. Yeah. I was just going to keep going because I thought that was the only route out of the problem. But what then happened was, over that period of time, I realized that the team were not going to do the same. And I expected them to do the same. And I expected them to work late. And I expected them to work harder. And I expected them to share in my pain. And I now obviously realize that that's crazy. There's no way that, my team would deserve to share in the pain of that I was feeling and the responsibility that I had, because it wasn't their responsibility. But I did get very bitter and very angry towards my own team and resentful that I was trying to bail out the water quickly as I can, as much as I could, and I didn't feel the same was applied from them. And I now realize that that's a very unrealistic expectation. And so it came to the point I thought, well, if I can't get the team to do what I'm going to do or prepared to do, then we just have to restructure it. And then we did a big restructure of the business.
And so I probably asked you two questions there, but so the second one was, how do you feel now, having said that, you're the most successful business in your space within Scotland? That's a big turnaround from where you were, right? So
yeah, HiFi Corner has always been a very prominent brand in this space. Yeah. And so it would be unfair to suggest that before my involvement that it wasn't successful, because it was. Yeah. It was very successful. Yeah. But businesses go through, peaks and troughs, and it's about how do you deal with those dips, and how resilient is the business. So how do I feel about it? I think it was tough to get involved in the business during a dip. But again, I think the positive is that it's probably made me more resilient, and it's probably given me more appreciation for the hard work that went into it before. Yeah. If I'd taken over a business that was just doing really, really well all the time, would I have learned as much? Yeah. Arguably not.
It's interesting. I'm going to give you a phrase just now, which I don't even know if it's medically true, but basically, it works, which is a broken bone mends stronger. And for me, it's that idea. You have to go through the pain to then come out the other side and, a more, resilient, stronger, thriving business. Yeah. So sounds.
And I think in a family business, one phrase that I picked up that I love and I use now all the time is that a fact or an assumption? And when we did the family business coaching, somebody would say something and the family business coach would say, is that a fact or an assumption? And then you start to go, well, so you try and say it's a fact, but it's not a fact. It's clearly an assumption. Yeah. And therefore, as soon as you realize it's an assumption yourself, you then need to then ask the question, well, am I correct or am I not correct? Yeah. And that level of being that explicit about it, I think is very helpful, not only in a family business or circumstances, but generally with working with my team now. Yeah. So my team will say, the client won't be happy if we don't deliver it on Thursday. And I'll say, was that a fact or an assumption? And they go, right, I'll call them, and it breaks down a bit of a barrier. So that's another little tagline that I do like.
So let's kind of fast forward to now then, I guess, like you've had the dip, you're back up, you've got this shop, you've got some cool stuff going on. You mentioned like that negotiation piece at the beginning. I'd be intrigued to hear like, how does that negotiation piece play out in sort of your day-to-day role now with the huge suppliers that you work with who are, global brands? Just talk me through like what that relationship's like and how you manage that.
Yeah, so I've made some big steps in the business and changed the business quite considerably to how it was. And I think that's really important because it's more dangerous in a business not to change than it is to change. Because everything else is changing around us, so we have to develop it. And again, in family businesses where the older generation's involved, perhaps that change is maybe typically a little bit slower and there's a little bit more resistance to it because why would we change something that's worked? But for instance, I'll give you an example of exactly what you're talking about, was that I wanted to start selling a very premium speaker range brand. And in order to sell this brand, you had to purchase them and have them on display in your showroom. It's quite a common thing that they want the product to be accessible and available. So I sat down with the brand, and the capital investment was about £70,000. Now, I knew that in my current account, including working capital, I had about £40,000 at the time. But I really, really wanted it. And I thought, if I get this and I get it right and we sell some, it'll transform the business. And it'll build the reputation, because this brand was, very up and coming. But I thought, if I make this leap and it fails, well, I'll have to probably fire sell the stock. It might even take out the business. So I went to the brand and I negotiated 90 days to pay for it. And I just thought, let's go for it. I've got 90 days. And it so happens that when we took this in, the product was in such high demand that we sold an unbelievable number of the product. And when the 90-day invoice came, we could pay it, and we were absolutely fine.
Nice.
But in business, sometimes you've got to take you've got to take a calculated risk. I'm not a risky person. Some people, I think I'm quite risk averse. But if I know about it and I know it intricately and I know the market intricately, then it gives you more confidence to make a decision like that.
Yeah. And so obviously that would be a pivotal moment in the business, to take the risk and then kind of see it kind of pay off. What are some of the other moments in time that you think, actually, do you know what, that was quite a big pivotal moment for us?
I think once we'd started to make the business profitable again and we were growing it, and once I had the confidence of that deal, because what that did for me was it said, actually, your knowledge and your experience that you've built over the last 10 years is really valuable. So next time when one of these comes up and your gut says you should do that, then I did it. And we then actually did a similar thing, maybe not to quite the same extent, but to build the portfolio of the shop and build the portfolio of brands that we then supplied. Another one was about 4 or 5 years ago. We actually had the opportunity to buy a competitor. And that was another pivotal moment. And the way we structured that deal was we said, well, look, we don't have the capital to buy you, but what we'll do is we'll agree a purchase and then we'll pay out over a period of time based on profit. So what we were able to do with that acquisition was we were able to effectively give that new company a target to self-finance out its own purchase, which is, was a fantastic learn for me, great experience, and a really interesting thing to do that was outside of my normal day-to-day operation of my business.
More negotiation again.
A lot more negotiation.
Yeah.
A lot more negotiation.
It's interesting. I just keep coming back to that because I don't think I'm a very good negotiator. Like, I think I fold pretty quick. I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. The idea of going into a car sales room. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, there you go.
But like the idea of going into like a car sales room and like I just hate that. Like, I just hate it. I can't do it. Well, probably shouldn't say this in front of everyone. They'll be scamming me. But I think it's just like quite interesting, that element when it's so kind of inherent. Do you think it's a lot more commonly found in a business where you're kind of buying and selling like a physical product? Do you think it plays a bigger role in that? Do you think?
I think part of being a small entrepreneurial business is that most things are a negotiation. And so that realm didn't seem too alien to me, and it's okay. But I don't think I'm a particularly great negotiator. I just think that I come from a family that's almost just a little bit like cheeky enough just to say, how about this? How about that? And it's a little bit like, if you don't ask, you don't get. And if you say it in a nice way with a smile, sometimes you can get your way, sometimes you can't. But if you say it in a nice way, then you don't need to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit then about what it's like dealing with clients who are kind of in a different wealth bracket. Because there's two kinds of people that buy from you, I'm guessing. That's an assumption, not a fact. You can tell me. You can tell me if it's a fact or not. But I would guess you have your audio files who are just obsessed with audio, who maybe don't have the financial backing to be able to spend 15, 20, 30, 50 grand on an audio piece, but it's their life investment. And then you've got folk on the other side who have silly amounts of money, who just want a home cinema and are going to spend $500,000 on it. So talk us through like how you manage those relationships between those folk. What's that like?
Yeah, so the business caters for quite a really wide range of budgets. So people go past our shop and they say, I can't afford to buy anything in there. Realistically, we do, a lot of business with systems like Bluetooth speakers, etc., which are, £600-700. I mean, that's still a lot of money. I get that, but and then up from that price point to, as you say, £500,000 cinema, which we actually have in the showroom, which people can come and listen to and see and experience, and it's something else. But yeah, the customers tend to fall into a couple of categories. One is there's an enthusiast audiophile customer base that enjoy equipment. So it's a little bit like watches. Like no one's buying 6 watches just to like double check the time. Like they're buying it because they love the thing, the item.
Yeah.
And there's people that buy hi-fi kit for the same reason. Some of these objects are just beautiful. They're really well engineered. A lot of my customers maybe have an engineering background and really appreciate the device for what it can do and its capabilities. There's then another type of customer who's just really into music. And they maybe play a musical instrument and they want to recreate the sound in their home as accurately and as true to life as possible. And then, you know what, there is a section of people that just have a lot of money and want something that's unique and that's different. But actually, most people assume that's our biggest customer base, and it's not. Our biggest customer base tends to be enthusiasts and music enthusiasts who just want to listen to something, listen to music. I've got customers where you'd think the records were holding up the walls in their house because they've got thousands of records. Thousands of records. Wow. Customers that are going to hundreds of thousands of concerts. And so, to then have a system in their house that's of good quality that they can then really enjoy and gives them a bit of escapism in their own house is really important to them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How do your staff then deal with, again, I assume that actually, as many others do, that the big clients are the ones that come in and just go, well, I've that, and out they go, how does your staff, because again, we've met a few of your staff, some of the team, they're all audiophiles. So how do they respond to the folk that are just there to impress their pals because they've got the money and they can buy the stuff?
Do you know what? I think most customers now are so well informed. This is a stark contrast to when I started 22 years ago, where people would walk into the shop and say, I want something nice, what do you have? And you would say, I have this, this, and this, and they would take it. But people now are just so well informed. I mean, I don't walk into any shop without knowing approximately what I'm looking for. I might have a couple of questions, but really, we're just so well informed thanks to the internet and thanks to YouTube video that you can see all these products there. And so what my team's job is their job is not really to sell equipment. Their job is to ask questions of the client to make sure that what we provide them is correct for them. That's their only job. And if we can provide the client with the right thing that suits their listening tastes, their room size, their aesthetic requirements, then I think modern sales is about matching the requirements to the product, not just selling something and ramming a product down anybody's throat.
Interesting.
And have you had in the past, as you make that transition, as you say, to more kind of current way of proper selling, the hard sell. So you walk into some of the other shops and you can tell that someone's just trying to make a sale to earn a commission. So did that ever exist in the business, and did you have to change that, I guess? Yeah,
so when I started in the business, every single person was on an individual commission system.
Right.
And the problem with that is it breeds the wrong culture. And in actual fact, when the business got into difficulty and you've got that underlying culture where everyone's out ultimately for themselves and their own commission and not putting the business first or the customer first, then you breed the wrong behaviors in the team. And they don't become helpful because they're only interested if you want to spend a lot of money. And you'll know this. You'll walk into a showroom and you can probably tell if the guys are on some kind of individual commission system. You walk into our showroom and all the guys just be super helpful, super friendly.
Yeah.
They'll all help each other because they're not on that.
Yeah.
They just genuinely want you to have the right product for
Brilliant.
your needs. But that was a big cultural shift.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when we went through the difficult time and we made a lot of redundancies and we shrink down the business, I now realized that the reason we had to do that was the culture of the company was not conducive to the way the market was moving. And we had to make that big change.
Yeah, interesting. So we always ask everyone kind of at the end of our podcast, what is your guiding principle? What does that look like in your business?
A lot of people will say that, delegate. I believe what's worked for me is doing every single role in the business. I think you should know about everything. I don't necessarily think you should then always do it, obviously. You then hire a team that can then help you and do it. But for me, working from the ground up and knowing every element of it, it's given me the experience that, I know what my team are doing. I know what I'm asking them to do. And I think that's hugely important for a business. And I think it's saved the business. I think it's saved us lots of cost as well. Because I can now sit down with, a new website designer and I know what questions to ask him because I did it for the company. So knowing the correct things to ask can save you a lot of time and get you a better result. So I would say do everything for a period of time so you know every single role in your company that you are asking someone to do. And it also means that your team will respect you more for doing it because you're not asking them to do anything you haven't done yourself.
Yeah.
Can I ask one last quick question? Just as I know that's usually the one we wrap on, but just one question, and it was going back to your dyslexia. One of the things that you'd said previously is potentially how that has become your superpower.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what's behind that?
Well, I think that I've got my dyslexia to thank for lots of things.
Yeah.
And we've got lots of business leaders who are dyslexic, famously dyslexic.
And the reason I'm asking is, over my time in coaching, I've I've worked with a number of people who would describe the same as you, which is they're dyslexic, didn't necessarily get on too well at school, but are amazing people with great businesses and really having a good life. And again, it's interesting just to kind of hear your perspective on that.
Well, there's 2 points I'd like to say on it. One is that when you're at school and you go to an exam room, you're not allowed to copy the person beside you. You're not allowed to copy your friend. And one of the biggest learns in business is that you come out of school and you think, you're taught, don't copy anybody. Don't copy anybody. Tell you what the best thing to do in business is. Copy somebody.
Yeah.
They've done it. They've done all the hard work. Just copy it, make it a bit better. It's not difficult. And I don't consider myself that clever, but we've been hugely successful. But I would be lying if I said it was my ideas.
Yeah.
You don't need a unique or original idea. Just take someone else's and make it a little bit better. So that's the first point. I think the other point with the dyslexia is that to a degree, when you go through the school system and you're really bad at it, you feel you have quite a low level of self-esteem to a degree because you feel like you don't fit in. You feel like you're not performing well, and you're told you're not.
Yeah.
You're told you're a D student or you're a failure. And I think how that makes it a superpower is that if that's what you think, if that's what you're told, well, there's a couple of things you can do out the gate when you get into the working world. And one is you can accept that you're a failure and you can just give up and you can sit down. Or you can overcompensate and you can say, well, actually, maybe I'm rubbish, so I'm going to try and prove that I'm not. And I definitely fall into the overcompensating category. I believe probably still deep down that I am not very good, so I will try 10 times harder because I come in with that notion.
Very nice.
Struan, thank you so much for coming on and chatting, sharing a bit of the story, some of your stories, and wish you all the luck in the future as you continue to build.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you.